I know that patience is a virtue. Right now, we're still in that period in between the actual ongoing arc and setup. It's just how it is. I obviously want to get to stuff with Viernes. I mean, like, I want to see what's going on with Gold Owl, the Signario sisters, what's going to happen with, Godjill and God Serena, as well as, like, I'm still very curious if Godjill's going to even get to go or, like, what the plan is with that. But either way, right now, we got more of a fun chapter that did end with something that personally I thought was I thought it was way better than the previous chapter. Like the general content, like the fun stuff that we were going through, I thought was better in terms of just like in my opinion of reading enjoyment. But on top of that, I think the end cliffhanger that Mishima likes to throw in at the end of these kind of chapters, where we're just kind of not doing anything serious, it's more for fun, but to kind of keep it alive in the story, is throwing a something that is a curveball or something that relates to the actual plot, that it's like, okay, cool, I at least get this, and it's not just me waiting 2 weeks to have a fun silly chapter. It's not like that's a problem. It's more so, I think, the time, because obviously 2 weeks, it's double of what it is for a weekly chapter, but because of that, it ends up, well, part of it is because double the time but not double the pages, so because of that, it ends up feeling like you're getting less over that for waiting for said chapter. But I did really like the overall setup of this one. I did like that. I actually didn't notice this. I wasn't thinking too much about it. It was a previous chapter. It was like Natsu going to do an arm wrestling match, because I figured that was just a cool Natsu picture. And then in this one we get Sting, and obviously it has to do with what's going on in the chapter, which I actually liked. I like when Mishima does stuff like that. I know he's done it before with other chapter covers, but it's just one that I didn't expect at all, because I felt like it was just one of those ones where it kind of just happens. There's no real otherwise not, unless you just remember, oh yeah, cool, this match is up. But either way, we get back and to the chapter, and all these dudes are inside of Lucy's room. No Rufus or Orga. Like, Rufus is one thing. I feel bad for Orga. I've talked about it a bit, but it's like Mishima at least did stuff with Rufus. Like, Rufus was one of, if not the most troublesome opponent for Sabretooth, just because of the versatility of his magic, and he had a pretty solid fight with Gray. I really liked the showcase of Gray, who's a Maker Wizard, a more caster, but he's an adapted one because of how he fights, that he's pretty much become a battle mage, whereas Rufus was more of the classical Maker Wizard, where he's a ranged caster. So I just thought that was cool to see Gray end up fighting somebody who was much more honed at the core of what type of magic it was, rather than where he was at, not just fighting a brawler opponent, but somebody who stuck more with the line of his magic and kept going. Similar to like Lucy versus Angel, but obviously more so, way more progressed. Like if it happened maybe in like Alvarez or now, to where like Lucy has ways of fighting outside, like way more of what you would expect a traditional summoner to be able to do. But Sabretooth came by, and they were like looking for an inn, but Lucy's landlady just let him in, just letting all these people freeload. One thing that's interesting is they're like saying how they came to Fairy Tail a few days ago, and that was obviously going on with stuff with the White Wizard. I have to go back and double check. I don't think there's been any long, crazy terms of time period passing. I thought there was, but I think it's just one of those things where it's collectively you don't really notice it until they just straight say it. Because I know it's been some days, but like I don't think it's been that crazy. I'd have to go back and check. I don't know if maybe it's a mistranslation, or it's like just something that maybe maybe wasn't like hard fact checked or something whenever like they were whenever like Mishima was writing it. Maybe it's like, oh, if it's been supposed to have been like a month, maybe he forgot, or something like that, where it's just like an easy slip. Either way, I will say, because of that, I definitely do fall under the people that with their idea that when we saw, the Edalus Irene born, that was a glimpse of something that's going to happen later in the future. I think it's something more closely to that, just because otherwise I don't know when we would see anything from Edalus. I wish Mishima just made it easier to understand by just having Nightwalker be pregnant when we saw her after a long time. Because that was like the thing that was really kind of confusing, because she wasn't pregnant at all, and if it's supposed to have been a few days. How is she giving birth? So I would assume it's like a glimpse of something that, will happen in like a year or so. Because we know that obviously Nightwalker and Mystigan, I'm not calling them Urza and Jalal, I don't care. They clearly had a thing that just hadn't fully kind of come to fruition, similar to Jalal and Urza, but way more so progressed. Like, he knows that she's like way into him, and like other people know. It's just like you just have to have that icebreaker. But I think it would make sense that at some point, because obviously being around him, that they would end up pretty much just going with it at some point or another. But one thing I really liked about this chapter, and I'm real quick, I'm just going to go back, I guess I got the chapter pulled up. I'm going to go back to the last chapter real fast, just to skim through it, and just to kind of refresh on what happened. Obviously, like the stuff with Diablos and them parting, I did really like that. Elefsaria is still sus. All the stuff, though, when they got back to the guild was neat, but I didn't have it as interesting in this one. Probably out of the stuff we saw, like, I liked, obviously, it's like, hey, Wendy, you did get a little taller and you've grown up a bit. I liked that just because it's like, it was an ongoing thing with her that, oh, yeah, she never actually got taller, grew older, got bigger. But I like that this was not the case, and it's like, okay, no, that's not the thing anymore. She is going to be progressing, and it shows, like, an actual step of growth. And obviously, like, Wendy's a pretty developed character, but, like, one of the things that was, like, an ongoing kind of hindrance is that, for her at least, is the fact that she was like always going to just be small and never kind of grow up to be more mature, because we know that like Wendy's sensitive about that, and she doesn't want to be like this like petite girl the whole time, as well as like Laxus having the part with talking about Alexion and getting this power. But other than that, I didn't think the chapter was as hype for a fun kind of chapter. This one, though, I really liked for what it did to the characters. There was a lot of character trait nodding, like a lot of stuff that if you paid attention to the series enough to at least remember, like, whatever quirks and whatnot are about a character, it's like you would see some of these and be like, oh yeah, or understand where it's going, like Urza being confident to challenge Minerva to an eating contest. But if you remember their whole tiger competition back like right at the start of Alvarez, Minerva factually has like, she's got the shonen main character eating capability. I'm trying to think if there's any characters actually in terms of like regular human-sized people, not like a giant or anything, or any like, Elfman or somebody. Like a regular-sized person like Minerva like can eat that much. Because like people in Fairy Tail, like they have some like anime gluttony people, but it's not like Goku or Toriko or Luffy where it's like they eat entire like full course meal. Well, Toriko's crazy, but you know what I mean, where it's like they eat to like insane levels. Goku not as much, but obviously like Luffy and Toriko crazy, or Kirby. I do really like that. There was a lot of that in this chapter. Obviously, one of the first ones, not the same one, not like as obscure, but a strong one to start. Obviously, people always being in Lucy's room. It's like the longest gag in the series that's been consistently not like forgotten about or put aside and kind of like, no, we don't want to use it right now. It's like, it happens all the time. It's an ongoing thing almost every time Lucy comes home. And I think that's one of the reasons why after Tartaros, when she went there and nobody was there but the note, I always thought that was like a really strong impact because of like what you understand about the characters and like what it would mean for like them not to be there. But one of the things is like Urza was saying how she sent them a letter, or she was going to send them a letter. But they like look at it and they're just like, the handwriting is terrible. The wording sounds like aggressive. And we know that like Urza actually has really bad handwriting. That was one of the things that happened for Tartaros and why they showed up later than when they should have, because Urza's handwriting and letter was just abysmal. Like it's funny because like people will call her a Mary Sue because she has only a few good, like she only has a few like things she's really good at: combat, being an authoritative figure, and what else is she really good at? There was like one thing I'm trying to remember. It's like she just has like some like random side traits, but you know what I mean. Like she actually has a lot of things she's bad at. Like we know she like acting, and she has like terrible stage fright. She's really bad at like packing and understand like portions and whatnot. And then like her handwriting and her ability of like communication with people is like through indirect means. Like she's not there to actually like tell them. She just seems to like always fuck it up and and make it go really badly in some way, shape, or form, which I think is funny. I always like that, like, there's added things of, like, that she's just as shit at. Because it really shows, like, hey, she really excels at these things, but it's like, don't let her do this. Don't let her get over here, because she's going to fuck it up. But also, I'm a big fan of Sabretooth getting a guild trait as well, how they have, like, the greatest library on the continent, and I think that makes a lot of sense, because when you think about, say, when they are now again, but say, like, early series, Fairy Tail was the #1 guild on the continent, and you'd think the #1 guild, you know, obviously would be more luxurious, grand, and whatnot. Fairy Tail obviously keeps it more to the ground, but we know that, you know, part of it is because they have to pay so much of collateral damage and stuff for everything that their members get into while they're out doing these missions in the first place. But Sabretooth being up there because they had such egos and they were all about, you know, their image and having, like, this show of power and prestige, I think it makes a lot of sense that they would have, like, these luxury items that it's just, like, they just have it to show off. So having something like, oh, we have this insane archive and record, and it's like, you don't really need to have anything in, like, oh, I have to have this, like, 10-piece explanation on how they're able to do this, or, like, a nod at when it happened. It's like, no, I feel like stuff like that, they can just be like, oh yeah, we did that just because it would make us look good. And I think that, again, I think that makes sense just by how Sabretooth was depicted and how they, you know, they've been displayed. Because even after what happened with Genma, it's still very clear they are a, you know, they're a show guild. Like, not in a bad way, but they like to put on a display. They like to kind of just be extra. And I mean, secretly, they're a fashion guild. Also, why does Rogue have his damn sword again? He's not going to use that. This guy has had that sword all the way since he was introduced, and he's never even pulled it out. The only time a Rogue has ever really used a sword, not counting like his Shadow Dragon Slash, like what could constitute as a sword, is Future Rogue throwing a Shadow Sword at Future Lucy. That's about it. Nothing else. I am very curious, like, when they're talking about it, she's like, oh, because they're like all excited to see the library. Oh, as well as another character trait, Gray being really affectionate and having a lot of adoration again for Frosh. Stuff like that I really like, because I don't like it when you introduce something about characters that it's like, oh, Gray has, you know, Gray really likes Frosh. He thinks Frosh is super cute and he just likes being around him. So it's like, if we had Frosh and Gray in the same room in this chapter and there was no, like, this didn't happen, I feel like that would have just been kind of a forgotten about part of his character that would have been, like, kind of silly to kind of leave out. And I really like the attention to detail with a lot of stuff in this chapter. But, like, Yukino, one thing is, like, Yukino saying, like, oh yeah, the study hall of Saber is not open to the public. I'd be like, don't you guys owe these dudes a lot? Like, they're not trying to steal stuff. I would assume anything that Fairy Tail is doing, like, if they showed up and said, hey, we just need to borrow, you know, your library because we're looking for something, I'd say, okay, go ahead. Like, they're not doing anything really bad, and it's not like they have to. It's not like, hey, Sabretooth, we have a mission and we don't have a lot of money, so we need to, like, borrow a billion jewel from you guys. No, it's just let them in the library, they'll hang out. But like, Natsu's talking about, like, you know, he's trying to figure out what a library is, and I think that makes sense. He's never been to one. Because it's like, it's not like, because, like, think about it, in their world, he didn't go to school, so they didn't have something like a base library. Magnolia, like, doesn't really, at least from what we've seen, I don't think they have a library. The guild used to have their own stuff, but it's like, do you really think Natsu was like, man, let me go into this room and read all these books? And it's like, when he's out doing it, you know, different missions and adventures, like, do you think he would go anywhere and actively look for something that has a bunch of books? I think that's kind of funny, just because it's something that, it's not one of those ones that's kind of confusing that he doesn't know. It's like when Natsu's talking about, like, babies coming from eggs. I mean, technically, but not really. But not the way that Natsu was portraying, because he was thinking more of, like, Happy, because Happy came out of an egg. But it's like, man, someone needs to explain this to you. Like, I assume he understands what, like, sex is, but he probably doesn't know, like, he probably doesn't know, like an explanation of the process of how, like, it goes from that to baby being born. So I would assume that, like, there are just some things that, like, he knows about, but it's like he's aware it exists, but it's like anything extensive, he's just like, I don't need to know that, and he just doesn't. I do think that's funny. But his, like, response when it's like, oh yeah, it's a library, as where a lot of books are kept, and it's like, oh, That's cool, I guess. Whatever. That was just really funny to me because again, that's what I think that response really tells it all because it's like it's not he doesn't get it. He's just like, I'm not interested in that at all. I have no desire to go hang out with a bunch of books. I thought that was good. But again, character trait, Sting being Sting. Sting wants to make it a competition to see, if Fairy Tail can beat him in a set of games, that they'll let him use their library. And again, Sting is always trying to be really competitive for Natsu. And one thing about that I think is really funny is like both of them have that nature, but as seen in this chapter, something we've seen about Natsu throughout the series is he's a really sore loser. He's really bad at if he takes an L, he won't be like, no. It's like if there's room for him not to count it as a loss, he will. But if it's like an undeniable loss, like when he went up against Ahsoka or with the whole shooting range in the the side chapter where like they had to shoot targets, and then he lost, so he had to like do stuff for her for the day, like be like an assistant, like stuff like that. Like as long as there's room for him to deny it in some way, shape, or form, or not see it as an actual L, he will. But it's just like if it is, then that's that. But he will avoid taking an L as much as possible because he's just bad he's bad at just accepting he lost. But it's not like, I always think it's funny, it's not like he's like, nope, didn't happen. It's more of like, fuck, how do I explain this? Like every time, and you can look back at that chapter too, it's like when he lost, he's like sweating and panicking. It's more of just like, fuck, how am I going to explain this to people? They're going to Gray's going to make fun of me over this for days. It's like back when Gray helped Natsu with Fukuro, is he's just like, Gray's going to hold this over me. Like, he's not even that mad that he lost to this dude. He's mad at the repercussions of what it's going to mean in his social life if he's going to have to deal with just this shit. Which, again, I think is really funny all the time for him because it tells you more about his character rather than just him just being upset. But they're going to do like a 5-on-5 game. Sting at least was smart because he knew that like a regular fight, there was no way they were going to win. So it's like a set of games, like a set of rounded competitions. The first one is Frosh and Happy, and they're going to like see who's more popular. Here's the thing on that, because Happy obviously loses. Frosh wins. My belief, like legitimately, this is my belief. This is my headcanon. A lot of people in Magnolia probably know Happy, but probably don't like him as much because he fucks with people and he trolls. Like, think about it like this. You have this blue cat you've known for, you don't see him all the time, but you know him for years. But he's constantly up to pranks or like trying to fuck with people. And then you have you have a green cat in a pink frog suit who's always smiling, always in a good mood, and is always very friendly to talk to. I think Frosh had that no problem. The only thing that I would say for the Exceed that I would vote over Frosh is Panther Lily in a bar. Like if you remember Dragon Cry when him and Gajia are like looking for information and you have Panther Lily doing like shots of scotch. That's like peak Exceed, just because it's like he's both in his cute little form, but because of his voice and his demeanor and how he's acting, you got to take him seriously. It actually kind of reminds me of Puss from Shrek as like a relevant thing, since I think a movie just came out. Where it's like, obviously, he's like a little kitty, but like because of his voice and how he's depicted, he actually is like a serious character. I like that. I think that was, part of that is obviously, overall. Well, no, because the stuff with him drinking is obviously something that's more my opinion, but it's like, I personally think I would definitely vote for drinking Panther Lily over Frosh. But then also I like that Natsu's like compliment. He's like trying to get Happy better. It's like, you may not be as popular, but you're more blue. And it's like, that's true, but I don't know what that does. Second round is Gray versus Rogue. They're going to do a game on stepping on people's shadows. And obviously this is not good for Gray starting out. Rogue is a shadow wizard. I thought it was funny that Gray forgot until he ended up like already agreeing to it. Which is kind of funny because like obviously he's seen Rogue, but he's never fought Rogue. And really he's barely been in interactions with Rogue. I feel like it wouldn't be crazy for it to slip his mind. Because for me and us as readers, we know because, we've gone through the series, it's easy for us to remember powers and stuff. But for Gray, like, you gotta think of, like, Gray's life, all the different people he's fought and all these different things. I feel like if you gave him more of, like, 5 seconds for him just to jump in, decide it's his turn, then he would have remembered or figured it out. But it's just probably is because he was impulsive and he wanted just to jump in and participate that he forgot and didn't really think about it. But he's going to, he's trying to get Rogue Shadow. Rogue's just moving it. But before Rogue's about to go and step on his, Gray makes a ice sculpture of Frosh, and Rogue won't even, he's not even willing to step on the Shadow, which, again, character traits. I like that. I really like that we were able to get a really nice refresher on all these dudes in this one. It felt much more like a lively fun chapter than the last one. The last one was all right, we got to depart. The last one felt more about departing from Sabretooth, Diablos, and then setting up for this chapter, which I like. There was a little bit of cooldown comments on stuff that happened in the Dogre Labyrinth, but I think it was more so for setting up this stuff with Sabretooth. And I really did like this one with all these different kind of little nods to the characters and obviously quirks and stuff. Also, Gray, once he had that opening, just blitzed right behind Rogue. Obviously, Gray is a fast character. I always know it's funny because I've talked to people that'll be because they will say Gray is a very speed-based character, but people will only associate with it with the ideas of the Flash, where it's absurd speed, but it's no, this character is just constantly depicted at being faster than other people, so it's he is more of a speed-centered character, and it's Gray has all these feats of speed and reaction, but because he's not I must run back in time, some people don't count it. But Gray ends up winning that round, but some deception. There were no rules against deception. And then the next game, Yukino was fucked. Yukino was absolutely done because Lucy obviously is very intelligent and she has a very strong memory. And so they do a quiz, which is actually on Sabretooth. And there's one of these I definitely agree, Yukino not knowing. The third question is what is Rufus's secret technique he used in this part called? And you have images behind him showing the scenes with Rufus. It's his frozen. Oh god, I'm trying to remember because I'm looking at the fan translation but I'm remembering the officials. I think it's Frozen Black Sword of Lightning is the official name, but something like that around those lines. Let me pull up the chapter really quick because I want to see actually what it's called, because it'll bother me if I don't at least go and check because I know the chapter it's in. Let me see. Should be Frozen Black Thunder Sword. I remember it differently either way. Doesn't matter. Regardless of which, her not remembering a specific attack that she probably only saw him use once, I think makes sense. Her not knowing the name of the Tiger Food Festival is more suspicious. Her not knowing Orga's last name, though, is kind of mean. You work with this guy. He's it's not like he's new. You've known him for years. Because you keep this in mind, since the Grand Magic Games, we've had it just from that, the Tartaros time skip and the Alvarez time skip. She's known this man for over 2 years and doesn't even know his last name. That is unfortunate. Orga is one of the most shafted characters in the series. He just does not get treated well. But yeah, Lucy was definitely going to win this. Obviously, she's really intelligent, great memory, and she does also bring up the fact she used to be a reporter for a while. So it makes sense that she would be able to, she would have this kind of deductive information skills and ability to remember specific aspects, traits, and spells and whatnot about characters, things to remember. Lucy wouldn't have forgotten that Rogue was a shadow magic user. That would have immediately come to her mind. But third game is Minerva and Urza. They're going to be fourth game is Minerva and Urza, and they're going to be in an eating contest. Gray even brings up that Urza she's he says try not to eat too much. I'm willing to bet knowledge wise that he knows that Urza isn't some crazy eater. And even in this, we see it starts out, there's all this food in front of Urza, and she eats what looks to be, I would guess, a plate. Because you see next to Urza, there's a plate with a ham on it, and there's 2 stacks of plates. I do not think that the smaller stack is Urza's. I could be wrong. I don't think it's mentioned, but based off what we've seen, I'd be willing to bet both stacks of plates are Minerva's. It's just, to me, I think that would make sense, because, Urza, has never, she's never had, some, crazy eating display, whereas, we know factually Minerva does, and Minerva has a history of it before. Then the last one is like an arm wrestling match between Natsu and Sting, and I don't know why Sting just didn't go for a fight, because I mean, like, this is just a straight physical display right here. So it's like, unless in Sting's mind he thought, like, I can't beat Natsu in a fight, but I think I'm physically stronger than him. Like, unless he thought that, I don't really see why he thought this was going to go well for him. But there's also the fact that I think Sting, this is a very strong possibility, that Sting knew that they were going to lose. Like, he would just, not like, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen, but it's like, if we do games with them, there's a very likely chance we're not going to win, because obviously, like, the Fairy Tail members are overall way more skilled than they are. They're aware of that. Like, they're aware of, like, the gap between them and some of the people, because it's not like Sting and them are weaker than everybody in the guild. It's just like the big people in there obviously are still above them. Put Sting against Elfman and Sting's going to slap him around. But while they're arm wrestling, like, it starts out no magic, it's just muscle. Natsu starts to use some fire, and it starts to become a problem for Sting, who then uses his White Shadow Dragon abilities to pretty much null the fire, which I actually really liked. We've seen aspects of, like, Sting's magic and him saying things like that, like he can purify and do all these things to other powers, but, like, he just straight canceled out Natsu's fire. He purged it, so it's like, that's a pretty solid, like, ability display for Sting. Like, I'm not gonna lie, even though it's not done in, like, a crazy battle scene, it's still done in a situation that's supposed to be taken seriously, so it's like, Sting can do this. But, like, after that point, Natsu tries to use, like, what you'd consider technique for the Fire Dragon arm wrestling power. Sting does the same thing for the White Dragon's version, and it's like, they're just pretty much competing and pushing. Like, Natsu, what's funny is, like, Natsu puts it more on his shoulders, and it's like he's trying to buff up, like, his like his general, just like his torso, and trying to put, I would guess, more weights and more kind of like have a better sturdy foundation, whereas Sting just puts it all into his hand and just tries to be like, I'm just gonna try and force it down immediately. And then Natsu just says, fuck it, Fire Dragon King, and then does the higher version of his attack. And then I do gotta talk about it, because obviously it's something that's been a little worded. Sting isn't weak. Like, Sting clearly already was, like, competing pretty well with Natsu in that display, but Sting in base obviously isn't going to be able to take Natsu's Fire Dragon King mode attacks. I do think if Sting went all out, he could beat base Natsu, but beating base Natsu is not really that impressive in the verse. Like, Natsu is strong, but, like, all of Natsu's crazy things are, like, Fire Dragon King mode. Like, once you get to, like, the limits of Fire Dragon King mode, and then you, like, that's where it really kind of starts, of, like, where his crazy levels are at. Because, like, obviously this is not Alvarez, this is a year plus later, but in Alvarez, Fire Dragon King mode was mostly needed for Spriggan people. Lionheart doesn't count, he's like a classic summoner, so he was bound to be way less durable than the average Spriggan person and just wizard at his level. But Natsu ends up just doing that, completely overpowering Sting, because it's like, that's funny is both of them are just kind of like, it starts at obviously like more of like a friendly competition, and then they start to kind of like put in effort. But it's like, think about this, their base regular attacks and stuff aren't that crazy, but Natsu going for like a Fire Dragon King move, not in Fire Dragon King mode, but just one of the techniques, is like such a like, again, sore loser moment where he thinks he might lose and he says, fuck this, I don't care, there's no rule that says I can't, I'm going all in. And he ends up wrecking a lot of the guild. But again, it's funny. I like that about the character traits in this. Again, Natsu being a sore loser and not wanting to fail. So, like, he ended up putting, like, a level of effort that it wasn't banned, but I feel like Sting wasn't expecting that. Because it's like, once he says that, when Natsu says Fire Dragon King, Sting's like, come on, are you serious? He just seems upset. And then now they're at a point where it's like, okay, you guys can go use our library, but we have one condition. I want you guys to bring Jalal with you. And, man, I know some people were hyped out for Sabretooth showing up last week. I was. Obviously, like, I like the Sabretooth members. I was hyped to see, like, okay, well, what are they going to do here? But now, like, but that's not even close to my hype for Jalal. I can't wait to see what Jalal's going to do. Because here's a fact. This is a fact. Even for the people that aren't fans of Jalal, when Jalal is involved, shit gets the most crazy that, like, Fairy Tail gets a lot of the time. Like, Jalal is like this, he's just like this fast-paced boost to anything going on to kind of just jump the pace a extra level. Because like whenever he shows up, you know that like shit is going down. Like Mishima doesn't use Jalal as anything other than like a display of like, okay, stuff is getting more serious. Jalal's active now. Like he's actually gonna participate and do things. This is like a funny thing I didn't even notice until now. For the people that didn't notice, like comment below and tell me if you saw this before or like if you go back and look and see what I mean. The third to last panel, it's at the very last page when Urza thanks Sting for letting them use the guild. You actually see Makarov in his wheelchair looking at the guild in panic. And it's just like, this poor dude, he can't get away from this. One thing is just like really that it's, I don't think they have to worry too much. Unless Lackey's not there, because I feel like if she's there, she can just do some wood make and fix a lot of this up. But either way, it's just like, fuck, now we got to do this again. It's like, at least because like consistently, the guild has been destroyed for like every year for the past 3 years. It was destroyed in Tartaros. It was pretty much destroyed in Alvarez for the most part. And now it got wrecked again. So it's just like, it's becoming a tradition for the guild to get destroyed. If Mishima doesn't go back to this design, I really would like the second guild design. I really like that one. But I do like this one too, or unless he's going to go for like a new design. I don't really know. But yeah, solid chapter. I thought it was really good. Like I didn't think that I would have enjoyed it as much as I did, assuming it was going to be, one of these more fun chapters. Because last week's chapter, I liked it because there was some stuff in it that was cool. But it's like, it was read really fast. It wasn't as entertaining. It wasn't as fun. But like this chapter I thought was really fun. And I really, really liked seeing all these different like character traits and bits about them that weren't forgotten about. I'm a big fan of that. I really like it when stuff like that happens. Like if two characters have a set thing that has to occur if they're next to each other. Like if two characters they hate each other so much that they will fight on sight, and you get them in the same room, like the story just progresses to what leads them to each other. They have to fight each other. It's like if you write some stuff like that and then don't do it when it actually happens, it just feels weird. So like all these things in this chapter were things introduced about all these characters that again came back and were actually used relevantly with like things going on and in ways that was fun to see again. So I thought this was a really solid chapter. In terms of the chapters that it's like in between arcs where it's obviously more like you're seeing more like not slice of life, but like slice of life for like a battle shonen where it's like we're not doing crazy plot drama stuff. This is just kind of some fun things that's going on. This is more for the characters and the enjoyment of seeing them do stuff. So it's like out of those kind of chapters, this is definitely one of my favorites in 100 Years Quest, just because of all the different interactions and bits we saw in this. Though I am mad that Rogue has his sword again. Like, you're not going to use it. You are not going to use that sword. If Rogue pulls that sword out, I will be so surprised. Like, if he pulls it out, I'm willing to bet that he'll like, put it down, or it'll be like, it would be some technique that requires a sword, but isn't for a sword. Like, he's not a swordsman. Like, he throws it into somebody's shadow, and it's like they can't move, and it's like, that's it. He's not going to actually do swordsmanship skills. He just has like a trick that requires a sword. I just see that coming. But anyway, other than that, comment below. Tell me your favorite thoughts are about this chapter. Did you have the same opinion on it that I did? Because I really liked just seeing all these different things about these characters come back. I think it makes them again feel more lively as characters rather than just like, hey, look, remember us? We're here for a cameo and then we're going to leave. It felt more like an actual set of events that happened between these characters rather than just Sabretooth showing at me like, you guys can use our library and that's it. And then they kind of fade out into obscurity like they don't matter. I want Sting and Rogue to participate in like some fights and fight some enemies in this next coming arc. But if they don't, I'm at least happy we got this chapter, because it's like they aren't just kind of forgettable background characters that only show up when it's to help the main cast, but it's like they actually have at least stuff that shows, yeah, these are in terms of the verse, in terms of the context of Fairy Tail, these are living, breathing characters that don't suddenly lose all these aspects and traits about them when they aren't when they aren't the focus of whatever's going on. It's like, after the Grand Magic Games, Sabretooth characters didn't just suddenly, well, other than Orga, didn't suddenly just become background forgotten pieces that Mishima never touches again or does anything other than like exposition or, you know, using them as plot tools. So I think this made a lot of sense too, as I mentioned, because like out of all the guilds, out of all the big guilds, that one that would just have something to have it, I think would be Sabretooth. Like Lamia Scale or Blue Pegasus, having these, you could explain it. But I think that with, like, the easiest explanation, like, the fastest one would be Sabretooth. Just because, again, if they just have, like, if Sabretooth had, like, their own luxury, like, you know, 100 acres of resort, or, like, you just think of, like, crazy things that, like, they could buy with how much money they had, and, like, how much they, you know, were probably making at the top, that they could just buy because it makes their guild look more successful, bigger, more, like, widespread and growing. So I think that made a lot of sense to give it to Sabretooth. But anyway, other than that, actually, I gotta say, real quick. If we get to that library, well, no, when we get to that library, rather, I expect Rufus to be there. Because, like, that should be Rufus's fucking hangout. He should always be there reading these books, memorizing things, memorizing, like, stuff on magic. That would be cool. But it won't surprise me if we get there and Rufus is there and Orga is nowhere to be seen and we don't even ever see Orga. Like Orga is, like, so weird for, like, a character in Mishima's series, because most characters like that, he does, like, especially for, like, a guild that is more relevant. Like, he doesn't just, like, shaft people unless he just straight kills them and it's like, I don't want them around anymore. But besides that, like, he usually, like, would at least have them do small side things. But, like, Orga has had pretty much nothing. And again, think about it. We don't know anything about his backstory at all. And it's like the most you really ever got out of Orga was, like, that first display when he went up and sang a song after defeating Warcry. But it's like, since then, his character has had little to no substance at all. And it's just always been a weird thing for me, because it's like Mishima never, like he never had to be some crazy all over the place character, but I felt like Mishima just gave up on him because, like, he didn't really care. Like, he's got a weird thing with God Slayers, I don't know why. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, but for the like button, subscribe button, check out my other videos. But than that, appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.